Okay, onward. When we look at the cost of capital, we have to combine the loan holders, or the debtors, i.e. the banks, and the shareholders together. You may recall I said the banks typically right now about 7%. Shareholders typically around 12%, 10 to 12%. The loan amounts, and the shareholder investment amounts, and the rates of return are always changing. So think of it this way: you're paying off your mortgage, so that loan amount is changing. Shareholder investment amounts change because if we have profits, the amount invested is going up. If we have losses, the amount the shareholders have invested goes down. So the numbers are always changing. So we got four pieces of it. So what we have to do is put those four pieces together, and we have to weight the parts of it. And the technique you may have come across before is weighted averages. And in this case, it's the weighted average cost of capital. Okay, we're going to use a pretty simple way to calculate this compared to some of the other ways there are to calculate. I'll show you one way later on. This is a very simple calculation in terms of you can get really, really complicated with this thing, but we just want to keep it nice and easy. It's small business. There are in larger companies sometimes full-time people devoted to this sort of calculating of things. So don't really want to go there. Small business, if we're sitting around doing this all the time, we've got way too much time on our hands. So here's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the weighted average cost of capital and how to get that. The first part is the equity times the return on the equity. So again, that's the shareholders, and if they want 10 or 12%, divided by the total equity and the debt. Okay. The second part of the equation is the debt, or the loan, times the return on the loan, or the interest rate on the loan. Again, divided by the equity plus the debt, or the loans outstanding, whatever you want to call it. So there's our formula. Okay, so to use a numbers example, we've got a company with $400,000 in bank loans and $200,000 in shareholders' capital and $800,000 in retained earnings. So this company's been around for a bit. It's got some profits and it's been kept in the company. We have $1.4 million in capital invested in the company. Okay, but there it's invested by different parties. One is the bank, one is the shareholders. Okay. Now we've got to calculate how these things interact, and we're going to use the weighted average capital cost. Using the money invested as an example, the loan, of course, is $400,000 out of, or proportionally out of, $1.4 million. So it's 28.6% of the capital invested in the company is the loan. Similarly, $1 million is invested by the shareholders. They have some startup money they put in of $200,000 plus the $800,000 of retained earnings. So 71.4% of the capital tied up in the company is the equity. Okay, taking it a step further, what I've done in this previous slide was portion of the first term of the calculation and the portion of the second term of the calculation. Now we're going to put in the 7% and the 12%, so move to the next slide for that one. Okay, and here we go. So we've got $1 million times 0.12, that's the shareholders' investment, divided by 1.4 million, that's the entire investment, bank and shareholders. On the right, we've got 400,000, which is the bank, and that's at 7%, 0.07. And again, that's divided by the whole investment by both parties of 1.4. Okay, so we do the calculations. We get 0.0857 plus 0.02, and taking it all out, adding it up, we get 10.57%. Okay, remember, 0.1057 is the same as saying 10.57%. So basically, this is the company's weighted average cost of capital. All right. weighted average cost of capital. So we said the cost of the money to the company is 10.6%. We'd be correct. Okay, notice it's in between the 12% and in between the 12 and the 7%. It's going to be somewhere in between those two numbers. Okay, this is kind of intuitive, but maybe I need to spell it out. So that's it for the simple calculation.